Hi, this is Kessel Bukowski, and in this video we're going to be doing a general overview of Native Americans for APUS history in period 1. And here's key concept 1.1, stating that before the arrival of Europeans, Native populations in North America developed a wide variety of social, political, and economic structures based in part on interactions with the environment and each other. So to put it in simpler terms here, we tend to sort of encapsulate the term Native American to refer to all Native Americans, but really Native Americans are very unique in their own tribes, and a lot of this is dependent upon their environment. Their environment is going to be very much very much affect their customs, whether they are hunters or they're gatherers, or if they're sedentary. And from there, they're going to each have their own unique social and political and economic structures. So when we do use the term Native Americans, be careful not to overgeneralize. Now, with that said, we are going to actually be generalizing just a little bit in this overarching video here in Key Concept 1.1. Now, when we look at the Mississippians, as well as the Cahokians and the Mound Builders, they're out there in the Midwest, and these were rather complex societies that really flourished mainly because of the cultivation of maize. And hopefully you realize that the word maize is just another fancy word for corn. They will, of course, fade out in the 1500s, but there are still remnants and remains of them today in the Midwest as well as the lower Midwest. But certainly corn is going to be a major influencer of this society. Now, here's a little bit of a closer look here on this map, along with some of the related cultures. And again, we are talking in general terms because there are just so many different Native American tribes, and to really focus on each and every single one, you could certainly take years just simply studying that. Now, in terms of corn, certainly around 81,000, maize agriculture is going to spread from Central America through North America to what today is, of course, going to be the United States. And we see it being especially popular in the Southwest. And this is going to be highly dependent upon irrigation systems, such as using the Rio Grande, will be very important in terms of irrigating, watering maize, as that is very much dependent upon water. But even more importantly, it's going to be transforming societies. Societies that were once dependent and were much more nomadic, moving from place to place, that are hunting and gathering, now they're going to be living much more sedentary lifestyles, because now that you're able to grow corn, right, you do not need to move around anymore. You can be sedentary. You can be more permanent. And this is going to encourage villages and even an urban type of setting and more concentration of people in societies now. They're no longer going to be as nomadic as they once were. So when we're looking at corn, we're not just looking at it, wow, it's feeding people, it's part of their diet. Yes, that's important too, but think about the social impact of that as well. And that is really the big idea here with corn. Now, moving on to the Northwest and present day California tribes, roughly 300,000 natives lived in California before European contact, and you're going to see that mainly, for the most part, they are going to be hunters and gatherers ruled by wealthy families. In particular, you're going to have the Chinooks in the Pacific Northwest, and that's in places like modern-day Washington State, Oregon, and even perhaps a tip of Northern California. But by and large, they are not as advanced as when you look at other cultures such as the Aztecs and the Incans. But nevertheless, they are an important tribe out there, and here you see in the bottom right a Chinook canoe. But again, note that they are along the coast. Now, moving on to the Great Plains region, which is more or less over in this region, whereas here you see the Chinook in the Pacific Northwest. But going to the Great Plains and Great Basin region, overarchingly, the biggest impact on this area is going to be the advent of the horse. Originally, again, you are living off of hunting and gathering. There is certainly a dearth of natural resources, and this is going to affect even white settlers when they eventually are going to be coming into the area. So this is not something unique in terms of these particular Native Americans, but they're also not the most advanced in terms of social complexity or even the hierarchy. But Nevertheless, when you look at the natural resources and the lack of natural resources, that is, you have houses even made out of sod. So when you think about it, not certainly the greatest type of dwelling to live in, but again, rather nomadic people. Now, what's going to sort of change this is the advent of the horse. Now, keep in mind, the horse is not native to North America. That's going to be brought over by the Europeans into North America, and this is going to be very important. It's going to make it much easier to hunt the buffalo, follow the herds. Certainly, it's going to allow Native Americans to be much more stronger in this region militarily. It's also going to allow them to be more traveled across terrain and, again, go after those buffalo herds. And certainly some Native Americans in the Great Plains and Great Basin region are going to be known for being rather ruthless in battle, certainly later on when we cover that with their white settlers. But certainly the big idea here, the advent of the horse, is going to certainly change their life quite tremendously. And again, here's another look at with our Great Plains, Great Basin region. Now, when we look at the Northeast and the Atlantic seaboard, again, you're looking at many complex societies, mix of hunting and gathering along with agriculture, and you're going to have rather developed permanent villages. If you remember from your fourth grade education with the Lenni and Lenape Native Americans, if you're from New Jersey, certainly we're going to lump this in. And certainly in particular in this region, more or less in New York State, the Iroquois, which possess many of the overarching archetypes for these types of Native Americans. But certainly they are going to form a collection, or what's known as a confederacy, a rather loose confederacy of Indian tribes. And certainly it's going to be hard to pin down this particular tribe, because you couldn't just call them hunter-gatherers or just mainly agricultural or rather permanent. They are rather a mixed society, a combination of all of these things. Certainly you're going to have corn being important as well. Now, one thing that's interesting about the Iroquois in terms of from a social viewpoint is that they are going to be matriarchally based, meaning that women are going to be in charge. There's going to be a lot of decisions made by females. Think about how that contrasts significantly to their European counterparts. But it's going to make sense, right? As the men are hunting, they're going out, right? They're not staying and being involved as much in community affairs as the women are, right? The women are tending to the crops. So they're there. They're taking care of the children. So it sort of made sense that they're going to be overseeing the community affairs. They're going to be the ones making the decisions. So as a result, that's why it is more or less centered around women compared to men. So in this very quick video, we covered a range of different Native Americans here. But again, it is important to note that when we just talk about Native Americans, a lot of this was dependent upon their environment, if they had access to a horse, if they had access to simply growing corn. This is going to affect their economic and society structures, as well as who's in charge, as we saw with the Iroquois.